Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Josh Parrish, George Danikian. It's that time of the week on FNR. And if I reflect back, Josh, about this time last year, the world was getting very, very comfortable with Zoom. A brand new bit of apparatus that the year before, no one would have known what we were talking about. But here we are, thoroughly comfortable and ensconced in yet another Zoom program on FNR, talking about the state of our football in this country. And what a disparity between the states. We talk about how we're not a commonwealth anymore. It's taken us 100 years to discover that we're all just, a bunch of feudal states playing. It's
all about federalism these days, George.
Yeah, but the only thing that brings us together, I know how much this will warm you, it's the FFA Cup. And even that is compromised at the moment.
Don't trigger me, George. The FFA Cup, I'm grieving for it at the moment, even though it hasn't been officially cancelled. But we'll see. We'll see. ACT is going into lockdown today. New South Wales, of course, have cancelled all their competitions. So it's hard to see us getting at least a fully fledged tournament.
Well, you know what they say.
Soon.
Okay. You know what they say, in great times of disruption, there's great opportunity. And I'm hearing that you correctly said that New South Wales has had to go the full hog and tell everybody that their competitions have basically been closed and cancelled. And that is extraordinarily sad, because I know how much men and women and young boys and girls put into their competitions each and every week. When you're in the midst of a competition season, it means everything to you. Your whole week revolves around that game. And then, of course, all the lead-up sessions with the training. And now in New South Wales, of course, we've found out, because of the huge contagion problem that's beset the state, that they've had to cancel competition. Now, we'll be talking to the CEO of New South Wales Football a little bit later in the program to get his perspective and why they've had to take this extraordinary step, and how much disruption it's bringing, and of course, how much discomfort it means for everybody, players, sponsors, the leagues involved, and all the people on the periphery that we don't necessarily always think about. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all the volunteers, the people that work extraordinarily hours to make sure that our football clubs, our pitches are available and good to go.
Yeah, we know exactly what this feels like, because we had our own lost season last year. I think they've played more of the season that Victoria had up until this point. So it's even more heartbreaking to have to kind of let it go and let all of that hard work kind of go by the wayside. But as hard as it is to imagine, it will be back at some point. And you will have all these clubs competing at a really high level again, but it is absolutely heartbreaking to put so much effort into a season and then see it slip by the wayside.
Now, you remember I said to you just a little while ago that these massive moments of disruption bring great opportunity. I'm here to tell you that there's a state in Australia, it's called South Australia, and it feels like there are no challenges. Football is on, and there's some great football going on. And I saw a couple of goals scored last night that are up there with some of the best you're going to see all year. So South Australia, and we'll be talking to the CEO of Football South Australia very, very shortly. They are pumped. They are going. There are some minor restrictions, of course, with the numbers of crowds. But hey, that doesn't seem to be a problem. More importantly, competition is up, it's out and about, and those people who want to rock along to the NPL matches, to the FF8 Cup games that they can play within the state of South Australia, it's good to go. How does that make you feel? Like really an outsider?
I mean, certainly a little bit jealous. I'm not going to lie, George, but very exciting. And given that so many of these games are streamed now, it's an opportunity for maybe some of the NPL fans, across state boundaries to actually get into NPL from another state. I mean, it's hard to follow anything outside your state when the season's going on, but if there's no other football on at a reasonable hour, of course we've got the European leagues kicking off very shortly as well. But that's maybe an opportunity to bridge some borders, at least virtually, and see what the talent level is like in the other states, because there's a lot of cross-border transfers in NPL, and New South Wales and Victoria are increasingly looking to South Australia for talent to pluck. So it's a chance to be a bit ahead of the eight ball with some of the signings your club might make.
That's a very good point, because I can reflect back on the days when we were looking after South Melbourne, back in the days when they'd moved from the NSL to the VPL as it was then, before it became the NPL. And a couple of our young stars that we needed to, really lift South Melbourne at that stage after all the disappointment of the demise of the NSL. We went out and grabbed a couple of talented South Australians, brought them over. And of course, in the opening match of the then VPL round, we played Heidelberg at what was the old, what it is Lakeside now, but it was Bob Jones Stadium. And we filled it close enough to about 12,000 people. And of course, the young South Australian managed to showcase his talents and score the goal that separated the two sides, which pleased everybody, especially the person who had identified him and said, no, we can get him. And we got him. And you're absolutely right. This is a time when, with all the skills and all the technology that's about, there are a bundle of people, I dare say, on committees who'll be looking at some of that streaming and saying, oh, just wonder if that person might fit our program, and how much is it going to cost to get them across. So you're right, opportunity abounds.
Plenty of recent examples of that here in Victoria. I mean, Paul Wilson, defender, has been very, very successful in his stints here, and he sort of bounced between the two leagues a little bit, but certainly one I think should be in A-League club conversations now. Oliver Zafaridis just recently for Melbourne Knights has been a bit of a revelation at left back, and Alan Webb, when fit, has been a marvellous striker up front. There's Blake Carpenter now playing for Avondale and has been in Victoria for a few years, but he went back last year after the season was cancelled and managed to actually win the title and score in the grand final for Campbelltown before returning to Victoria. So there's plenty of South Australians playing here and adding a lot of value, and it'll be interesting to see whether I'm not sure what the restrictions are, and it's something to talk to Michael Carter about, but whether some players might be tempted to go back for a quick loan stint, whether the registration rules permit, and obviously they'll have to quarantine.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to run past you, and because you've had to watch an enormous amount of football over the last 3 or 4 years with your arrival at FNR, the question I have for you, question without notice, Josh, how far behind in standard are we talking the players of the NPLs across the country today as distinct from 4 years ago?
It's interesting. I think it varies from state to state. I'd be hard-pressed to give you an opinion on WA because I haven't seen enough. South Australia, certainly, given the talents that have come from those leagues and excelled in the traditionally considered powerhouse leagues of New South Wales and Victoria, suggests it's right up there. And we've had a national champion from South Australia in the NPL National Finals not too long ago. So that certainly suggests real competitiveness there. Victoria, I am a little bit biased, but I still think is the hotspot, because so many players
don't mention hotspot.
Here.
Do not say hotspot.
Sorry, that's
during COVID times. It's a no-no.
I'll have to
Daniel Andrews
gets my football.
Daniel Andrews, when he monitors this program, I'm sure will send us some manner of message to say,
just
guys,
set off several alarm bells there, George.
Correct.
I still feel as if Victoria's
what
the
I'm asking
epicenter
is,
because of the finances involved.
Okay, but I do think the arrival of the streaming, the arrival of the added competition, the arrival of the FFA Cup, I just get a feeling that the players have seen what they've had to do. They understand the matches now. It's not as if they're happening in isolation or they're happening in darkness. With the added exposure, I think the players are lifting. I think the standard has lifted over the last 4 years.
I think you're right, George. You look at Queensland, I would say there's still an internal gap in that league between the top 4 teams and the rest of the competition. And you see some lopsided scorelines, but those top teams are super teams and can compete with any team from the rest of the MPLs across the country. Tasmania, I haven't seen enough to really make a judgment, but New South Wales and Victoria are very competitive, of course, and still probably the two strongest leagues. Mind
you, the Joe Marston medal winner did come from Tasmania. Nathaniel Atkinson can play some football.
100%. And I think a lot of the Tasmanian talent, if they get through, tends to leave quite early. So the local MPL there doesn't benefit as much from their contributions, but there's still several players who've made the jump. And they all seem to know each other. There's a little tight network of Tasmanians here in Victoria playing in the state leagues and the MPL. I think one good example would be Braden Mann, who's a very useful striker, has been playing for Dandenong City. And there's a few female players as well who've been very, very handy in Victoria. Rachel Sturton recently is originally from Tassie and has signed for Preston Lions and has been scoring bag loads of goals, and before that was playing for Bayside and doing very, very well as well. So, there's plenty of good examples of MPL talents coming across, but the sort of high caliber A-League ones like Nathaniel Atkinson tend to be plucked fairly early and put into those A-League youth academy systems.
We've got a guest who wants to join us. His name is Michael Carter. He's the CEO of South Australia. Have we got him ready to go yet?
We do indeed, George. So we'll take a quick break, and on the other side, we're going to be chatting to NPL South Australia CEO Michael Carter about a competition that's still very much in progress, still going despite the restrictions they're ploughing on, and aren't we thankful for that?
Absolutely. Stay with us. State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Josh Parrish is running the show from his wonderful studio. Where are you at the moment? Are you in Docklands at home, or are you travelling somewhere else?
I'm at home. I'm holed up in my bedroom here, George, with the virtual background in Hawthorn. So no Docklands outside the 5K for me, so I can't even go in there on my own.
Well, let me give you the responsibility of introducing our first guest.
Well, we've got the CEO of Football South Australia joining us now. They're keeping their competitions going despite the troubled times we're living in at the moment. Michael Carter, welcome to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Thank you, Josh. I feel a bit formal. I've got a suit jacket on. I'm in the office.
Right. I'm in my official uniform as well, which is my FNR hoodie, of course.
By the way, he's also wearing a huge smile. Yeah. Now, go easy on the smile, please. We want to be fair and reasonable. It's terrific to hear that there is football going, and indeed there have been some terrific competitions and matches. I think Olympic got up and did some serious goal scoring the other night. How are things in South Australia? Because Lord knows New South Wales is in a real jam and they've had to cancel all their competitions.
You know, we've come back from a brief 7-day lockdown, and then we had some lifted restrictions so we could go back to train. We had our resumption of games on the weekend, which was great, and everybody, by and large, did what we needed to do. I think that we're in a precarious position. I was speaking to Stuart Hodge earlier today, and our thoughts are with them, and obviously everyone in Victoria and so on. So. Fingers crossed we can keep going. We've got a fair way to go. We're sort of 14 rounds down of a 22 minor round series, and then obviously we've got a finals campaign after that. So we'll just do our best and keep doing what we can do.
What's morale like at the moment? Following that week of basically a hold up or a stop or a suspension.
I think there was a bit of relief, to be honest, in the community, George, that we were able to get back so quickly. Last year, obviously, was a bit of a different kettle of fish because we had to go back to training with significant restrictions and so on and so forth. But the government this time with SA Health, with some restrictions, decided to go back to training. And then I was out and about for the games on the weekend, and everybody did what they needed to do. Masks were mandatory outside, and everyone did what they needed to do. We got on with it. So it was pretty good. But yeah, there's a sense of relief at the moment, but I think everyone's sort of holding their breath a bit too.
Josh.
Yeah, what's the situation if someone wants to go to a football game in South Australia right at the moment, Michael? It's no spectator limits. Is it QR codes and masks?
Yeah, QR codes and masks. We're limited to 1,000 outdoor.
Right. Okay. So same as Victoria pre-lockdown, essentially.
Michael, question without notice. It was raised by Josh, and it's a good point. Where with these suspensions interstate, if there are clubs and they see opportunity, and what do we say before? During disruption, there's great chaos, but there's also great opportunity. There might be some clubs there who know that there are some outstanding young footballers who are not likely to see the light of day for the rest of the season, and we've got 8 to 10 rounds to go and possibly a final. Any chances of bringing some talent across the border, or are there major restrictions there?
Yeah, look, we just had a window which opened a week. That's now closed, so that opportunity is now gone, George. So,
oh dear. So there was a small window for opportunity, was there?
There was, yeah.
What was the take-up on
it?
that? How many players were moving across in that brief
got me there. I'm not sure. There was a bit. Those clubs that were sort of struggling were quite active, as you would expect.
I can imagine.
And those that were mid-table were trying to solidify their position. And those that were on top were trying to really make sure they stayed there. So there was a bit of movement. It wasn't massive.
Okay.
Fair enough.
For those
I guess
that
the 14-day introduction to that is a little bit of a disincentive for players trying to move across the border and in these unsure times.
Who's running the competition at the moment? Who's looking like they're going to emerge as victorious? The sides that are really making an impact and probably some of the names that we know pretty well.
Yeah, look, the competition's extremely tight. It has been for probably the last 6 years, I think. But this is no exceptions. Adelaide City on top on 28 points. Metro Stars are 1 point behind on 27.
Wow.
Comets are 26. Campbelltown 21. Stuart Lions 21. And then round out the sixth, we've got Adelaide United on 21 points. So there's 7 points between first and sixth. There's actually 8 points between eighth and first. So it's pretty tight.
Oh, wow.
A number of games left. And in the girls, we've got West Adelaide on top on 30, Salisbury Inter on 28. And again, it's pretty tight. Adelaide City on 24.
You've got less than 2 years. We've got a World Cup coming down under.
Yeah.
What is the demand? Are you seeing a demand with women wanting to play the game, young girls and women wanting to play the game more and more?
Yeah, so since 2018, we're about 30% up in girls
30.
And women. Yeah.
3-0. Wow.
Yeah, 3-0. And I think that's only limited by space.
So grounds.
Yeah, definitely. So we're a host city, which is fantastic. We're delighted with that. Up to us now to make sure that we, make the most of that opportunity. Through the board, we've set up a legacy committee, Women's World Cup Legacy Committee, and we've presented to the state government and so on about our plan to open new sites. So we're pretty committed to making sure we make a big impact there. But there's definitely demand. It's continuing to grow, but we need more space.
Michael Carter is our special guest on State of Our Football Nation, CEO of Football SA. And as we've just heard, competition is running. COVID did scare them for 7 to 10 days, but they're back, they're competing, and there's been some interesting manoeuvres behind the scenes to shore up some talent from interstate while there was a window up and about. And he's now telling us that the demand for young girls and women to play the game has never looked better. The rise in interest is something like 30%. And Michael tells us that they're limited only by the fact that they can't get enough grounds and facilities. What is the government doing in that regard? Have they answered the call? Have they said to you, we'll try and offer some new facilities? Or are we just basically at that point where there is no more room? We're obligated to support other sports as well, the SANFL and on it goes.
No, the government's been very supportive. All levels of government have been very supportive of the game here in recent years. We've seen construction to probably nearly 20 sites, which has been great. So that increased carrying capacity of the clubs over the last 5 years. It's been about 80 million in community grassroots sport, plus the State Centre for Football, which we spoke about last year when we were on air. And then there's the upgrades to Cooper Stadium. So we've been pretty fortunate. There's a number of clubs that are still lining up for their turn. There's still more money to be invested. We've put a plan to government to try and unlock new school sites, which we think is a good opportunity. That's space that's potentially sitting there not being utilised on the weekend. So we've asked them to assist us in investing in sports lighting and gender equity sort of change facilities.
Yeah, facilities, yeah.
and that's where we're focused. But look, we've got a good relationship, and they've been very supportive to date. And obviously, announced yesterday that the upgrades to Cooper Stadium have commenced as well in preparation for the World.
So what will they mean, Michael? What are we likely to see?
So new lighting, state of the art lighting, new playing surface, new change rooms, covered eastern stand to Cooper Stadium.
Wow.
Some upgrades to corporate facilities and just some tidying up, increased capacity to about 18,500. So it's a boutique stadium. It's going to get a nice little facelift in preparation for the World Cup, and it'll be a legacy, for Adelaide United and our major events moving forward.
That's a very good point that you make. It's always been a terrifically boutique facility.
Yeah.
I can remember when it was 10, 12,000, and to hear that it's getting towards 18, 19,000. I can imagine. Josh and I have seen it when it's like a cauldron. I've experienced it, right there during some fantastic derbies in the past.
Yeah.
And I can remember being there for the Olympics, and it was marvelous. And what was even more amazing, and I'm sure they'll be doing similar sorts of things, they had raised the grandstand around the ground. It was all temporary stuff, and it looked just magical. Even those areas behind the goals, and there were some very, very lucky and very happy corporate people getting some terrific service, but also some terrific watching the game so close to the action. And that's one of the great attractions about Coopers.
Sure is.
If you haven't been to Cooper Stadium and the doors ever open and you get a chance to travel again, get to Coopers for a football contest, and it's just great.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a bull ring, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah, I'm yet to see it in person for a match.
Is that
George,
right?
So it's definitely on my my football bucket
well,
list.
I can tell you, it's definitely like a bull ring, and it's fantastic. It's a fantastic facility, and to hear that it's going to the next level is even more exciting. Before we let you go, Michael, Paramount Plus became active yesterday right across Australia. That means access to a whole new platform to watch the game, the round ball code across Australia. There's a new era that beckons. Are you excited by it?
Yeah, I think the more accessible the game is, the better it is for everybody. And credit to FA for securing that partnership. I think that this is the start, really. I think of that, and Paramount seem to be a fantastic partner and want to grow the game with the FA and all the member federations and the A-League clubs. So, it's a great announcement, and we'll see where it goes. But it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
And the first events on Paramount Plus are meant to be these FFA Cup round of 32 matches, which is what I want to ask you about, Michael. I mean, everyone's sort of in the dark as to whether these things will happen. Which South Australian clubs are involved still? We've got some West Australia versus South Australia ties, if I remember correctly.
Adelaide Olympic and Adelaide City, and obviously Adelaide United. I know that there's daily discussions going on around the FA Cup and making sure that can proceed. Everyone's very committed to doing that. It's pretty tricky.
I bet.
And, we'll do what we need to do to support the competition, as will, I know, the country. But be great. The Cup's a fantastic event that sort of brings to life and connects the NPL community, competitions to the A-League and so on. So, it's important to go.
I was just going to say to you, what does it mean to the NPL competition and to the community? Is this their chance to stand alone and showcase, not only their clubs but their communities and the state?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, we had some fixtures last year. Maybe in 2019 it was actually, where some of the big amateur clubs were playing against the NPL clubs, and you've got crowds of 2,500 people, and they're so proud to host the games, and they do whatever they can to do it. And Elizabeth Downs and co pull out all stops to put on a great event and do so, and really showcase the game. So it again is an opportunity for that connection that doesn't exist in any sports really, other than probably football.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the volunteers again putting their hand up and making themselves available to help us carry the game?
Yeah, it's a challenge, obviously, with volunteers now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But those that are involved with the game, absolute credit to them to deal with the junior registrations and the complaints and so on and so forth. But they also get that really positive sense of community by being part of a club, that we all know what it feels like to do that. And some clubs do it really, really well. Yes, absolutely. Couldn't be done without the volunteers.
Correct. Michael Carter has been our guest, our first one for the day on the program, State of Our Football Nation. He's the CEO of South Australia. Very, very shortly, in the next 5 to 10 minutes, we'll be catching up with a man at the other end of the competition. His state is in lockdown. We're talking about the state of New South Wales. Stuart Hodge is the man who'll be joining us. From this end, though, we want to thank you, Michael. It's great that there is some good news and there is football being played. We wish you continued success and continued good fortune, and may the contagion be kept to an absolute minimum in SA.
Thank you very much, George. Thanks, Joshua. All the best. Keep well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
there you
Michael.
go. South Australia is playing football, Josh, and Michael's been terrific. He's just left us now. Stuart Hodge is next. He'll be joining us very, very shortly. And I'm sure that we're going to hear some horror stories from Stuart's perspective, because I couldn't imagine having to ring up all the clubs, all the associated competitions, and say to them, look, we've tried, we've done our absolute level best, but I'm going to have to call it. Yeah?
That's a tough call to make.
Oh, God. Look, before we do that, I want to run something past you. Have you recovered from that seismic news that came out of Europe only 48 hours ago? We were told that there was a lot of shenanigans going on behind the scenes. We heard that the La Liga clubs were flexing their muscle, and we heard that Barca and Real Madrid were just carrying the can for Super League, and Lionel Messi was being used as a bit of a waiver, a bit of a card, a special card to play. But it appears to me that was just hot air, and Lionel Messi has actually left Barca. And if the images from Paris this morning and last night are anything to go by, he's not going back to Barca unless it's there to play Barca in a European Championship game. What are you thinking?
Well, for starters, George, I don't blame any of the pundits who bet on the status quo, because until you see it in the flesh, until you really see Lionel Messi wearing a different jersey, it is so hard to believe that it'll actually happen, and it's not some sort of behind-the-scenes posturing.
When we talk about a little bit of romance, he actually looks kind of happy. But can you get comfortable with the number 30?
It's a bit weird. I had to do some Googling to figure out what the significance of that was.
Or is that Lionel Messi 3.0?
I think it's Lionel Messi into his 30s, deep into his 30s.
Yeah,
it's an interesting project, this PSG Galacticos Super Team Mark II. I mean, it didn't work out too well in the long run for Real Madrid when they tried to do a similar thing. But obviously, Messi wants to be happy. He wants to play with his mates. Apparently, Kun Aguero wasn't enough for him. He's ditched Kun. He's who must be the most upset footballer in the world right now, that Lionel Messi has just walked out the door just as he's arrived. But playing with his buddy Neymar at a club that can afford to pay his wages and is a front runner for the Champions League this season, I mean, it's a pretty good arrangement for Messi, because they won't be especially relying on him in league play. To carry the squad, and he can just rest his body and work himself up for the Champions League.
Did I mention to you that he's being coached by an Argentinian who speaks his language as well?
I mean, that's a massive benefit. I also think having some international teammates there in Paredes and Di Maria really has helped his case, and we've heard intel that relationship really helped the deal over the line, because Messi had such a great time winning the Copa America in the summer, and he wants to be around these guys.
Do you think that this they've done something that he has struggled with at international level, and that is to win some substantial tournament? Do you think this might unleash a new layer of calmness? Not that he was ever not calm, but you know what I'm saying. There seems to be a level of contentment. I watched him walking and meeting the fans, and yes, of course, he's got to put a bit of a show on, but he seems to me looking forward to this next challenge in a very different manner to the one that he was, preparing himself for at Barca. He's been there for a lifetime. Now he's had his first medical, mate, in about 21 years. Can you believe it? His first medical in 21 years.
It must have been weird, but
well, he's never had to do one because he's been there since he was 13.
I still think leaving Barcelona the city and leaving Barcelona the fans really does sting, and the fact that his last game was in front of an empty stadium at Camp Nou and was a defeat really, really does sting. I think it was against Celta Vigo, and you can't believe that's the end for Messi at Barca for one of the most legendary club careers of all time. But I think he's just relieved to be at a club that's run in a professional manner. I mean, Barcelona has been this soap opera circus for so long with their board and their elections and their mismanagement of the club, the panic in the wake of the Neymar sale. The best story I've heard, George, is a rewind to the summer in which they lost Neymar for his release clause that was supposed to be a fantasy figure that no one would pay, the 222 million euros. And suddenly Barcelona had this wad full of cash and were in emergency mode trying to replace him, where they probably, in an inflated market, should have just calmed down and held off and waited for the right deal. But instead they splashed 160 million euros on Ousmane Dembele. It was 120 on Coutinho, and it was 160 including the add-ons for Ousmane Dembele. And they went into that meeting with Dortmund and said, okay, 80 million is our limit. We're not going to go past that. And then Dortmund basically said 160, take it or leave it. And they abandoned the previously set limit that they had for themselves. It was like a problem gambler walking through the door there. So, I mean, that doesn't speak volumes about the Barcelona board members and how they've tried to manage the rebuild. I think that's just endemic of the ill discipline and the situation that the club has got themselves into, which has necessitated a rather aggressive salary cap from La Liga.
Are we going to see other players leave Barca now because of the fact that they have to shed contracts?
Getting rid of those players is the hard part because they've got a lot of aging established stars that clubs in a COVID-depressed market, bar the sort of state-backed teams like Manchester City and PSG, can't really afford. So it's going to be a real struggle to get rid of guys like... say Sergio Busquets, for example, who's on massive money. They've got so many of these overpaid players on their books. It's a real challenge to actually shift them. Like, one deal that makes absolutely no sense to me is last summer's move for Miralem Pjanic, who's 31, 32. Good player, but that's another old, slow, overpaid midfield playmaker, which is the last thing that Barcelona needed at the time. So it's going to be hard for them in the next few years to actually squish this. They're already 25% over the salary limit that La Liga has set, and the only reason that they were able to sign anyone this summer is because the salary cap didn't. Well, the salary cap didn't kick in, so they couldn't have even signed Messi on a free. This cap didn't kick in until a certain point, and they couldn't finalise the negotiations. So they've really bungled this. Obviously, they get sued by players' unions and so forth if they weren't honouring contracts.
We talk about corporate governance. We talk about looking after each and every club and making sure that you can afford your pay bill and you can afford to look after the other layers of each and every club. And here's one of the biggest clubs in the world that's been revered, and now it seems to be a hollow one, doesn't it? That it would allow itself to fly that. It's like that Icarus, they flew too high to the sun. The wax on the wings just melted, and down came this super club. I mean, it's actually very sad.
It is. And it's almost as if PSG took that 6-1 defeat very personally and decided to destroy Barcelona as a result.
That's
it's incredible. Point. Have you ever seen a club set out to just completely destroy another in that fashion. They've pinched their two best players. And not only that, but they've sent them into a sort of existential spiral as a result. They've killed Barcelona.
Here's a question. What do you make of 2.0, Neymar and Messi?
It's a funny one,
This is
isn't
the second time round.
Because he left in the first place to escape Messi's shadow.
Sorry, supposedly.
Well, he wanted to win the Ballon d'Or and it didn't work out. And now he's realised, I think looking back with rose-tinted glasses, that those years with Messi at Barcelona were his best years.
Yeah.
Correctly so. And his happiest years without the sole expectation on his back. And now it's a real big three with Mbappe and Messi there. And apparently they're great friends still. And Neymar's got over whatever kind of impulsive, rash decision he made when he was younger and has decided that the two of them actually work quite well together. But the thing is, Neymar actually plays in a bit of a different way than he used to. He comes short for the ball a lot more. At Barcelona, he was playing very high and wide on the left wing and would get in behind a lot and accept these big switches.
Because he had so much talent behind him. He had so much talent. Yeah.
And now he prefers to come deeper and get the ball and turn and take players on. So he's going to have to get out of that habit just a little bit to complement Messi. Otherwise, they're going to get in each other's way, even though they play on opposite flanks. Okay,
we're a day away from the EPL starting. Can you believe that?
It's amazing.
Brentford, one of the hottest teams in the Championship, playing its first game, I think, since 1947 in the top league of British football. That's some story. The busy bees or the bumblebees are back.
Well, I described Barcelona's board as problem gamblers, and I'm going to describe Brentford as professional gamblers, because that's exactly who they're run by, a professional gambler who runs his clubs in a very data-driven fashion. He also owns Michelin, where Eamon Mobile plays. So a sneaking suspicion that if Eamon Mobile continues to excel, he might end up in the Premier League with Brentford. It might be one of those intra-network transfers like the Udinese Watford or Leipzig Salzburg connection.
So they get off with a win, or it'll be a draw or a loss?
Oh, look, it's tough for Brentford in a new league, but I do really believe in their squad and this manager. Up against Arsenal game one, I'm not super impressed with Arsenal. Brentford are very good on the break and
speedy.
Toney, Ivan Toney is the biggest talent that we've seen come up from the English lower league since maybe Jamie Vardy. So I would back them to get a point there.
Interesting. Can you believe the EPL is just 24 hours away?
Well, George, I can tell you, we're actually going to talk about this in more depth later, because we've got a special coming up tonight at 8 o'clock.
Go on.
We've got a Premier League preview special. Myself, Nick Debano, Nick Hughes, Lockie Flanagan, and Pakua Frimpong are all going to be jumping on for our big Premier League preview that we've organised.
That sounds fantastic.
We're going to be critiquing each other's fantasy football selections as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
What I want to hear from you, though, is, has Nick Debano recovered from the demise of some of his super stallions at Inter?
Nick's not too concerned with Inter's demise, being an AC Milan fan, but for a Serie A lover, it is a little concerning, I have to say. He's mixed emotions, I would describe it as for Nick, because he loves the league so much as well.
I was going to say, are you surprised by Lukaku's move back to Chelsea?
No, because Chelsea have been after him almost ever since they let him go, and they weren't going to get Haaland, because it seems as if Haaland is happy to wait another year, and Lewandowski said no, basically. So Lukaku's the only blue chip centre forward available.
And last question before we catch up with our special guest from New South Wales, Stuart Hodge. Does Harry Kane stay, or does he go?
Interesting. I think City eventually do get the deal done. I think they do.
I think he's got a new contract at Spurs coming.
Oh, he's already under contract for another 3 years. He's not going to sign another one, is he?
I believe it's increased dollars. That's the latest goss. Anyway, let's catch up with our next guest. You got him focused and ready to go?
I do indeed.
He's had the most miserable last few days because he's been the bearer of bad news to a bunch of clubs and competitions in New South Wales. We're talking about Stuart Hodge, the CEO of football in the state. And of course, it's been knocked around, as has so much business and so much transport. New South Wales, the COVID challenge has been an extraordinary one. They look like they're going to be locked down for quite some time. Victoria, of course, went through much of this last year when the hotel quarantining fiasco got out of hand, and we saw nearly 800 people, or more than 800 people, lose their lives. So Victoria has had its terrible time, and they're in a slightly better mode, but New South Wales currently feeling the pinch. Stuart Hodge, welcome to State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here, though I wish it could be under better circumstances.
Oh, I was just going to say, you must have had the most difficult job in the country, because you've had to go around and talk to all the competition that are taking place in New South Wales, and to the men's competition, the women's, and to the youth, and say to them all, listen, we're going to have to cancel. Yeah? Yeah,
look, it's a sad day, unfortunately, but an inevitable decision that was reached yesterday. This lockdown is extending till at least the end of August, and with case numbers continuing to grow, the need to give our clubs certainty around what the rest of the season looks like was a really important factor. And I know that everyone wants to play. Everyone recognises the benefits, physical, the mental health benefits of playing, and unfortunately, we're just not able to at the moment.
We've had a brain drain out of Victoria, and it's gone to everywhere else in Australia, and there are some who've even left our shores. Were there people in New South Wales football looking to at least go to other states to play, namely South Australia and WA?
Yeah, look, and that is a potential. We also have some international players that have returned home to their countries, and we have, especially we're so fortunate to have so many W League players in our women's NPL. Some 80 players
80?
who are needing to get match action, and so some of them were able to sort of move to other areas of New South Wales just prior to the lockdown to try to continue to get match minutes in the Newcastle competitions, and we have some players who live in regional areas who travel into Metro Sydney to play, who are also faced with the dilemma of sort of dropping out of their NPL club for the moment and playing local association football to keep themselves going, because we do know that that the W League's growing in strength, and they want to be ready for that season.
What do you do with registrations? Are there certain exemptions being offered up?
Yeah, look, we are trying to support, especially those ones that are living in regional areas. I guess the one positive in all of this is that most of our regional areas have continued to play. And where we do have players that are living in regional areas that normally travel to their club in Metro Sydney, we're working with them to be able to basically deregister and then be able to register and play some local association football to keep them going.
So what have you cancelled? Just for those who've come late to the party and don't know what's happened in New South Wales, just run the decision for us and when you made it.
Sure. So the decision was made last night with the Football New South Wales board, but essentially it means that we're the remainder of all of our state league competitions, so all of our NPL, all the divisions of NPL 1, 2, 3, and 4, men's and women's, boys and girls, all of our SAP competitions. It's a really difficult decision to make, but the uncertainty and look, we understandably know that the government can't provide us a clear roadmap out of this at the moment. Their priority is obviously the health and well-being, and that's our priority too. And giving the clubs the certainty now that the competitions won't continue was a difficult decision to make, but a necessary one.
I can imagine. And you've got the FFA Cup that will also be hurt because there's some tremendous competition matches coming up or supposedly coming up. And of course, what do they go into? Are they going to suspension, or are they not going to be able to compete?
Yeah, look, we're having that discussion at the moment with Football Australia to see what can be done. I mean, we all rejoiced when we saw the draw come out and saw some mouth-watering games like Sydney Olympic and Sydney FC, and so we're just working with Football Australia and those affected clubs at the moment to see what can be done. But obviously a difficult situation at the moment, and obviously we're seeing it happen in other states as well, and hope that they're not impacted the same way we are. And
the broadcasters understand the challenges at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're all living through it with all of us at the moment. You know, it is a challenging time for everybody, and you know, we know that Football Australia have got a wonderful new broadcast partnership that they've signed, which will give great exposure to the FFA Cup, and so you know, collectively we'll all work together to see if we can find a solution.
Stuart,
what have you been? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, we've got some questions from Twitter. Someone's asking if you've been able to crown champions and determine relegation, or whether all of that's just been called off.
Yeah, all of that. We won't be crowning any premiers. There won't be promotion relegation for our senior competitions.
Wow.
You know, it's again, it's a challenging situation. You know, you always want to be in the position where you can let results on the park decide things. But we also felt with our youth structures that we'd had a phase of competition that determined some placings earlier in the year. And so we are moving to a new structure next year for youth football, noting the importance we believe in making sure that youth football are getting 30 matches.
Fantastic. Stuart, we really appreciate the fact that you came on short notice to give us a sense of what's happened and what's going on. We wish you all the very best with any manoeuvring that you can do behind the scenes to get some of those FFA Cup games up and running, because you've got, as you say, a new sponsorship deal, a new broadcast deal, and more importantly, no longer midweek games, but standalone weekend games. It would have been quite something, and everything became active yesterday with Paramount Plus coming online. So we can imagine how you're feeling right now.
Yeah,
like you've been banished to the dunce area, but it's not your fault. You've done nothing wrong.
No, and look, we obviously know that Victoria and Football Victoria and their competitions went through a very difficult period last year. Our thoughts are really with the players, the coaches, the volunteers that do such a wonderful job of putting the competitions together, and all we can do is make sure we work with them and with government and be back ready to go for the next season.
Good stuff.
Is there a sort of deadline in mind for the FFA Cup where we have to sort of say, certain states can't compete and A-League clubs get a bye, or is there a kind of end date in mind, like a working date that the Federation is using as saying, if we can't get it done by this point, it's not going to happen? Or are you just putting it off for as long as possible and then seeing what can be done?
Yeah, we're working hard with Football Australia and to extend it out as far as we can. And look, they've been great in noting that nationally there's some challenges that we're all facing, but obviously the significant ones here in New South Wales, and they're working through a range of options to try and extend it out as far as we can. And so, we really appreciate their support. I know the clubs do as well. And we'll keep working with them to try and push this as far as we can, before we, that unfortunate decision, if it has to be made, that we won't be able to compete. We'll do everything we can to avoid that.
Well, fingers crossed. Thank you, Stuart, for joining us on FNR. Stuart Hodge, CEO of Football New South Wales. And boy, what a tough few weeks and few days. And of course, the decision yesterday. Thank you, Stuart, for joining us. And we keep our fingers crossed.
Thanks a lot for having me anytime, guys.
All the best.
Thanks, Stuart.
Josh, that's just about wraps us up for this week.
Does indeed.
We got some football programming on FNR, and as you said, a very special one coming up at 8:00.
Yes, indeed. So we've got If You Know Your History next. Paul Mavridis is going to be joined by guest co-host Les Street, who's been working on a book of football stadia in the country, and as is one of the most intrepid viewers of some of the most obscure state league and grassroots football you're likely to meet. So I'm looking forward to hear from him. And then at 8 o'clock, we've got our FNR Premier League preview. So can't wait for that. Thanks, George.
If you've got any questions about Stadia, get in and use Twitter to reach out to Les. He'll answer all your calls.
Absolutely. Thanks, George.
Thanks, mate.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.